What is up, MMA and martial arts fanatics? Welcome back. As always, I'm Coach Greg, and today we are doing the system breakdown of Mokaev. This is my first system breakdown I've done in a good 6-7 months, so I'm excited to be getting back into these. I'm going to try to go back to doing one a month and get back into releasing these because they're a lot of fun to do, and I get a lot of benefit out of doing it. This month, Mokaev is a very interesting case study. He just got cut from the UFC a couple months ago after being 7-0 in the UFC and being like 30-0 as an amateur and pro fighter before getting to the UFC. So the guy's like 36-0 or something like that and gets cut from the UFC because he just keeps wrestling and keeps shooting. But that's part of what he does, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I actually really enjoy his style because a lot of what he does is very similar to what I teach, where you play an outside kicking game, and when they get close enough to close the gap, you shoot, you take them down, and you dominate. Not to mention the fact that I actually find Mokaev a very interesting character anyway. You know, raised in Dagestan, at the age of 12, he becomes a refugee in Manchester, England. You know, mops the mats to pay for his classes. At age 15, he starts fighting. You know, he's doing freestyle wrestling already. But at age 15, he starts fighting and just starts stomping everybody, crushing people. He also is, one, I don't think he gets tired. I really don't. Like, I have never seen him even like out of breath or struggling in any way in any of his matches. And I think it's because his game is so wrestle heavy that he's so prepared for 15 minutes to just grind. And so that's a huge advantage. Not to mention the fact that he is uncannily tough. He's had such a deep knee bar that you see the leg inverting and he's like limping afterwards severely. He had the same thing happen to his arm. He's just a guy that he just won't tap. He has no quit in him whatsoever. And I got to respect that. Now, there was some drama, of course, between him and Manal Kopp. I don't really care about that. I care about what happens in the ring, and I hope you do too. And that's what we're going to discuss today. So stay tuned. Let's start breaking down Mokaev. Okay, let's talk about Mokaev and what he does that makes him so effective in the ring. He plays predominantly an outside kicking game. And then when they start to get frustrated by that and they start to do things like blitz on him, he shoots and does a reactive shot and takes them down. This is why he does so much wrestling, because he draws them into it with a reactive shot. His defense helps with this because pretty much all of his defense is about retreating, right? He throws a kick and he retreats. He throws a kick and he retreats. And what he does is he'll stay on the outside and kind of feint a little bit first. I really like the fact he is a very active feinter. This, I think, is one of his better trademarks as a striker. I'm always a big fan of it when guys are they're constantly feinting. And this is a thing that he does a lot. Right? A lot of step feints, a lot of level changes, right? A lot of hit feints, like constantly feinting in here, right? A lot of movement, this kind of stuff. That movement and the feinting is a great way of giving them a moment of pause, but not too much, because remember, ultimately his goal is to draw them in so that he can shoot underneath them. But from the feinting, he has a couple of attacks that he predominantly uses. Almost all of his attacks, when he's striking, are kicks. Very little punching. He does do a little bit, and we'll talk about that, but the majority of what he wants to do is kick. This is part of why he doesn't take a lot of damage, by the way. Really, the only damage I've ever seen him take was like the knee bar, where the guy like inverted his leg, and even then, that was from a submission situation. You very rarely see him take any damage in striking. Why? Because he plays an outside kicking game. Not only are his opponents not super used to this kind of a kicking, this Taekwondo style approach, it's very point style, the same kind of problem that a lot of people had with Wonder Boy. But it's kind of like a really difficult situation because when they do get close enough to punch him, he takes him down. Very in tune with what we talk about in the Nemean fight system. So it kind of looks like this. His primary attacks tend to be the leg kick and the front kick. Those are the things he's going to hit the most, okay? And he's going to start building off of that. And this is great striking. He does tend to mostly do one-offs, but it kind of makes sense when his game is predominantly to pick him apart from the outside, keep it outside range, and as they start to draw, disengage until they overwhelm, and then he shoots and he comes underneath them. Make them overcommit. So from that perspective, it makes sense that he doesn't overcommit too often, although we will talk about blitzing as well. Most of his attacks, like I said, he'll stand switch, feint in here, throw a leg kick and get out, right? A good front kick up the middle. I like this technique a lot, especially against a lot of boxers and Muay Thai guys, because they tend to be here and they're mostly concerned with these roundhouse kicks. And they're concerned a lot more with punching. So this midsection becomes very available for a lot of the front kicks right up the middle. And because of the other kicks that he throws, he has a high success rate at landing this. My only criticism is his kicking. I feel like he should be putting more power once in a while, especially that front kick. The leg kick, you can start to pick it apart. But I feel like a lot of times when he fights, he's just trying to score and not decisively win. I think, you know, we talk about getting cut from the UFC. One of the things that would have helped with that is if he had more power in all his kicks. Very similar to what you see out of like an Edson Barboza. When Edson kicks somebody, the world shook. And that's what I'd like to see out of him. He's got the power, but he doesn't throw it. He tends to just play tag a lot. And I think this is a missed opportunity. You know, he can play that same game and just really start, especially setting up that front kick up the middle, like tag the outside kick, right here. And then as they come in, really just, as they come in, let them meet that force, the principal double force, building their energy onto yours and really lay into them. This is a kick that should be knocking the wind out of him, really. And then I'd like to see him start level changing, start hitting the head more, but that's neither here nor there. He does have other attacks that he uses really, really well, that he starts to build off of this. Now, because he doesn't want to be two-dimensional with his kicking, he does throw in the occasional lead side hook. So as he's in here, he throws the hook, and then he disengages. That tends to be the way that he does it. He usually tends to be the left hand, and then he'll occasionally throw in blitzing. Like I said, we'll talk about that. But it's mostly leg kick, front kick. Now, sometimes he also will throw this like kind of like a flicking roundhouse, and he's doing it as he leans back, and it becomes like that, where he just kind of taps it. And I wish it's very similar to like what Rose Namajunas did. And it's not bad, but this is once again another opportunity that's missed. He's landing a head kick. If you can land a head kick and you put a little bit more power behind it, you should be finishing fights with kicks. And he's not doing that. If I saw him instead do that same motion, but try to put a little bit more behind it, he'd probably be able to finish fights. Same thing with really all his kicks. Like the leg kick, I think you can slowly wear down, but every once in a while, you put damage into it. The thing that I like that he uses about the leg kick, though, is as guys step forward, he will sometimes like almost just kick out their feet and make them nervous on their advance. And I love doing that. One of the great times of catching leg kicks, we talked about this with Volkanovski, is as guys are moving forward, it's hard for them to check. So if you can get a guy coming at you and he gets used to, like, you kick him and then you retreat out, throw a hook and then you retreat out, throw a front kick and retreat out, then as he comes, as he moves forward, you catch that leg kick, and one, it's almost impossible to defend because they're advancing into it, and two, sometimes you might kick out the leg. From here, what is fun about Mokaev is that if guys start staying on the outside and they don't engage enough, he will sometimes throw big techniques. This is where you see him do like the two-touch kick, right? Like this kind of stuff where he touches off the leg and kicks, or he'll do like a spinning hook kick. He's landed this before, right? And this is what I'm saying, like, if you're landing a spinning hook kick, your opponent should be unconscious. Instead, he catches it, lands it on the head, maybe catches a little bit of hand, but he's not doing real damage with it. It's playing tag. And so I like the fact he plays an outside kicking game. I think he's very effective at it, but I would like to see him increase the power. I think that would be something that would help him if he does want to get back in the UFC, or if he wants to start winning in another, organization like, let's say, which we call Amazon, ONE FC, like that kind of stuff would be really great as well, if he put a little bit more into it. Now, that being said, stay tuned. We'll talk about. Okay, so from here, he starts mixing in a couple things I like. He does have a couple combinations I really like. One of my favorites that he does, and this is something I teach a lot, is the front kick to the jab. Just big front kick and immediately stepping down to the jab. He does this on both sides, right? Coming in here, boom, and immediately just follows up his kick with a same side punch. He's already thrown the front kick a lot, so it's a nice obvious follow-up. And I personally believe if you're gonna kick to the body, you should always put up a same side punch anyway, just to discourage them from catching it and also to give them a follow-up technique. So that way you don't just stand there looking stupid afterwards. He has a couple other combinations. He'll throw some hands sometimes that, he'll work his boxing combinations where he'll throw uppercut, jab, cross, like this kind of stuff. And he will occasionally throw a blitz on somebody And it's mostly like, as I come forward, like they're not engaging enough, so I'm throwing this stuff, and they're standing on the outside, and just like he throws the other big techniques, all of a sudden now it's pop, pop, pop. And the reason that this works so well for him, one, he doesn't overuse it. Two, guys are shelling up a lot, right? Or maybe they're dropping their hands because he's been throwing that front kick on him so much. And so as he comes forward, guys do this, and he can just freely kind of throw some shots at him without a lot of danger to him. And as a result, he tends to be okay. And the upside is that if they do try to, he can clinch or shoot, right? He doesn't end up in too much danger because he times it so that, you know, and this I'm talking about like setting and breaking pace. He sits there, stay on the outside, pop, playing a game where we're just doing one-up tagging, right? Pop, almost like point fighting, right? 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 And they get used to this. I throw one, I disengage. I throw one, I disengage. Until it's time to pop, 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 come aggressive at him. And now all of a sudden, he's not even like protecting himself. He's not even like head down on this stuff. He's just throwing hooks because they're going, oh shit. Very, very nice use of the blitz. You know, he has a couple other things that he throws as well. You know, I have seen him do like uppercut cross into a flicking roundhouse. It's just occasionally putting together threes, once again, just to change things up. Now, as far as counter striking, he doesn't actually do that much. He will catch guys with front kicks as they come in. Mostly what he'll do is as he comes back, if he can't escape and he's not ready to shoot yet, he'll throw a cross down the pipe. And then sometimes he ties up from there, sometimes he disengages, or sometimes he gets his shot off. But it's just, he doesn't have a ton of counters he has to do because he throws something and then he's out so that they can't access him. The one thing I've seen him get in trouble with a little bit, and this is one of those opportunities, is if you can blitz on him and just throw a punctuating kick on it. I can't remember who it was, maybe it was Tim Elliott, who was catching him with a leg kick at the end of his combinations, and he did it a couple times, but he didn't realize the opportunity to grow off of that. If it were me fighting him, I would do a lot of blitzes on him to overwhelm him, force him to retreat, and put up a high roundhouse kick at the end or put a leg kick at the end. Let him run into your kicks. So I start coming this way, and as he starts to cut direction, if he starts cutting to the right, which he tends to cut out this way more, which is less common. Most of the time guys go to the right away from the power. His preference seems to be mostly to go to the left. But if that's the case, then I come in here and I throw a combination. Boom! And I just follow it with that high roundhouse kick and let them run into it. Or cut off the ring. Glover Teixeira was really good at this. Throw it like a leg kick hook, body hook, head hook, that kind of stuff, and just cut it off so you move him back, and as he starts to disengage, you turn the angle and get to the side. Now the reason that would work so well against somebody like him is if you stay in front of him, he's gonna shoot. But if I turn a corner on him and force him to not be able to go this way, I have a much better chance of pinning him there and being able to get to work on him. This is not a criticism, it's just one of those opportunities. I think it wouldn't be awful if he had a little bit more counter striking and wasn't only reliant on backing up. I understand that's a game plan, but I guess I'm kind of thinking now in terms of, if this were my fighter and I wanted to get him back into the UFC or fighting and improving his game, that would be the way that I would go about it next. And what's cool about this is he already has a habit of retreat, retreat, retreat. Now all he has to do is mix it up once in a while. So instead of retreat and shoot, now he retreats back, and when they expect him to retreat, then you put it on him, right? Boom! You change it on him, and all of a sudden you become intercepting on him. That to me would be a good strategy to follow up on this if you're gonna play this kind of game, okay? So that being said, that's it for the striking aspect. We're gonna come back and talk about the wrestling and the jiu-jitsu side of this, which is really the strongest part of this game. Okay, so for wrestling, there's a lot to cover. It's the strongest part of his game. And unfortunately, all my friends and training buddies are responsible. They have jobs and stuff. So I'm gonna do the best I can with training dummies. But if you ever have questions, feel free to comment and go look at his fight footage and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. You're like, oh, I get it now. So the thing that's interesting about what he does and I'm not going to say he always does this, but he often does this, is his single legs. There's two things that he does that I find interesting. The first is that instead of doing your classic like single or double leg, right, doing this kind of stuff here, like that's like basically like 7th grade wrestling kind of stuff. Instead of doing that, he does a knee slide. And I'm not gonna say he never does it. Sometimes he just comes down and gets to the leg, right? But a lot of times he does this knee slide. And it's almost like in Footloose, like this kind of stuff. But what he does is he almost slides to the side and slightly behind him. That's gonna make turning the corner on him, which is the second like key aspect of his takedowns, and makes it very possible. See, what happens is when I shoot this way, I'm going forward. So to turn the corner relies on being able to push off of this foot, and all I can kind of do is this. But if I knee slide in, I can pivot off of this and get further around. So instead of pushing off sideways, as he comes forward, like he's defending, he knee slides deep to the side, and now instead of my foot coming forward to the outside to push off, it comes behind him and pushes off. The effect is that when he shoots from this knee slide position, it's very easy to now put them on their butt. What's cool about this is he's going to use this in other areas of his game that we're going to talk about shortly. He has 3 primary things that he's going to be concerned about when he shoots: the sprawl, somebody getting an underhook, and somebody doing a guillotine. 3 most common things that happen to him. And he has really good solutions for all of them. The first one, when he shoots, if they sprawl on him, he will often go to his bear crawl position. You'll see him use this a lot. Now, there's no rule that says he has to stay in there and keep on the legs. Habib Nurmagomedov did this a lot, by the way. Although he didn't necessarily get to the bear crawl, he just kind of popped himself back out. But as he shoots in here, if he doesn't feel like he's gonna get it and they start to sprawl on him, he gets in his bear crawl position and he works his way back out and he gets back to standing. So if they don't have strong grips on him and they just do an initial sprawl and they don't really have control of him, he slides right out. Now, here's the cool thing about this. From that bear crawl position, because he has so much space, he does a peek out. But the way that he does it, you know, when we all learn peek out, it tends to be from here, right? He'll do this and come around the corner. What's cool is that he doesn't have to do that. He's got so much space that if they have their hands around his waist, all he has to do is knee slide forward now. And now look, it's right back to that same single leg or double leg that he did before. So I'll try to show this as best I can. As he gets to here, right, he gets to the legs and this guy, get back up there, dummy. The guy's around his waist. So he's bear crawled up. And so now he can peek out this way. It didn't work very well in the dummy, but I'm sure you get the idea. But what's cool is he does this in a lot of his fights. So if you watch, especially when he's up against the cage, he does this a lot. When he goes to shoot and they grab hold of his waist, while they're trying to hold on, or maybe they're in that like seatbelt position, it's very easy for him to do a peek out because look at all this space he has. When I'm down here, it's hard. When I've come up to here, it's very easy for me to shoot my knees through and then turn the corner. So we're going to come back and we'll talk about the overhook in a second. But the last thing I want to talk about on this for dealing with the sprawl is the other thing he will frequently do is from here, as he shoots, if he doesn't feel like he has good purchase on the legs and they don't really have a good control, but he feels like he can get them, he'll switch and he comes up real high on the body and he comes to a body lock and he brings them back to the cage. That's the third thing that I'll see him do a lot, okay? Let's go back and talk about overhooks. All right, so let's talk about underovers, or if they have at least one underhook, which is usually if he's shooting and they tend to get one underhook is where we see this, or if you put somebody against the cage and they get one underhook. Now, I'm gonna do it against the wall just to kind of demonstrate, but this is where it usually tends to be for him anyway. So there's a couple things he does that I really like. So one is from here, as he's doing this under over, what you'll see him do a lot of times is he puts his head on the outside and he does a fireman's carry, right? And so he starts to come under here, once again, going to that knee position. But now, he does the exact same thing that he's been doing, right? He just comes around the corner, but he uses the fireman's carry as a setup to start to turn that corner again. Brilliant work from him. Like, it makes so much sense in his game why that fireman's carry it would work, because he already knee slides a lot. Like, from the overhook, he just has to get his head on the outside, and now he's in a position they're thinking about getting turned over, and all he does is come around the back. This is not an uncommon wrestling tactic, but what's amazing is how it works so well into his system. Now, the other thing I've seen him do that's really cool is when he starts getting backed up to the cage and he's got this overhook and he's starting to kind of like post into this thigh to prevent them to, like, from turning him all the way to the back. I saw him do this in one of his fights, and I can't remember which one it was. I think it was an amateur fight. No, I can't remember which fight it was, but it was so cool when I saw it. But as he starts posting in here, all he does is he decides to knee pick in this way and come back this way. That was a cool response. I'm definitely going to play with that in my sparring. That as he starts getting backed up here, he gets to the whizzer, he's fighting here, they start to turn him, he's defending, slides in, and just cuts the corner, goes the other way. Cool stuff. So that's mostly what you're going to see him do from the underhook. Now, since we're against the wall, let's talk about a couple things that you'll see him do. The big thing I want to point out is usually what he's going to do is get to the back. This is a very classic Dagestani style, like a lot of like what we talked about with Kamaru Usman, who's not Dagestani, but he does this a lot, the far side wrist control. My own professor is very adamant about it. I'm a big fan of it. Far side wrist control is one of the best things you can get in a fight because it guarantees you a back position and a very controlled back position. I mean, these days now they call it Dagestani handcuff, but it's really just a far side wrist control. And so what he does is, as he starts working in here, obviously he's going to shoot 9 out of 10 times. He just shoots from here and he goes straight to the legs. And he starts going back to that single leg and turning the corner. But sometimes he'll also switch and get to this far side wrist control. I'll switch sides just so you guys can see it. Right? And he starts getting to the far side wrist control. And then he likes to grapevine this leg. And this is very like classic, like Dagestani style wrestling. And like I said, Kamaru Usman does this a lot. I'm a big fan of it. Breaking him down this way and using this to get to a back control from here. From here, a lot of times what you'll see him do is bump him up and back control. But he is very good at getting to that position and getting good use out of it. Okay, in the last section, talk a little bit about some of the jiu-jitsu and groundwork that you're going to see out of him. I'm going to start from guard first. There's not a ton to talk about. He doesn't end up there a lot, but he does have a couple things that are at least worth just kind of pointing out that are his tendency. The first is that if you do happen to get to like a half guard on him, assuming we can get there with this guy, what you'll often see him do is he doesn't linger here. He's immediately working to get a foot back in on the butterfly, so that what really he wants to do is just be able to kick them off and get back to feet. This is a strategy I've talked about a bunch that I really like to use. Anytime you're on the bottom, like, you should predominantly be thinking about getting back to your feet. And the best way to do that is just put feet on them, kick them off, and stand back up, right? Frame, kick off, and get back up. And this is what he does. From the closed guard, I just wanted to point this out because I can't do this. So I'm not going to really be able to demonstrate this, but it's something worth kind of pointing out that's neat. And it demonstrates just how flexible this guy is. Like, you see him doing the splits at the beginning. Dude, that, like, flexibility is such a nice attribute to have, because from a closed guard, while the guy's pressuring deep into him, he'll take his foot and bring it straight all the way to his chest here to get to the triangle trap without having to move at all. He just brings his leg straight up and over. And that just kind of showcases one of the advantages of his flexibility. I think that's just kind of a nice thing to be able to do. Like I said, I can't do it, so if you can, good luck. The next thing I want to talk about is his closed guard top. He ends up here a lot, and while there's a couple things I want to point out that he does that I like, there's more that he does that doesn't impress me. For a guy who's such a good wrestler and so good at maintaining that position, one of the big criticisms I would have about him, and this might be contributing to why the OC did cut him, is even though he's winning fights, this goes back to what I was talking about, like winning fights by points rather than decisive victory. I feel like a lot of times when he gets to close guard, he doesn't know a lot of what to do, if that makes sense. Like he like knows to be, what you'll see a lot of times is his head's in here, keeping the head control, his hands are down here or in the biceps, hips controlled, and like maybe even up on his feet and stuff like that, and he's controlling the position, but he's not advancing, and the strikes that he does mostly tend to be, right? That's not what you should be doing from closed guard. Like this is a position that you should be thinking about how to finish a fight or pass and then finish the fight. Now, the one thing he does that I really like is wrist control. He's done this a couple times, and I think he should do it more, to be totally honest, is he gets to this wrist control, and he did this just to get to a crossface. I've also seen him do it, and this is my favorite. I would like to see him do this more. He gets in here, and he gets this post on this wrist, and then he brings his knee over top, and he throws a little shot. But from here, if you can throw a little shot, why not throw a big shot, right? Throw heavy on this when this guy can't defend. Like, and I would even maybe try to do something like get on this bicep control, get in here, put your knee on top, and now while this guy's stuck here, this is a very valid position. You're not gonna get 20 shots off. You might get one, but you can go back to this and spam this technique. What's keeping you from, and as he starts getting distracted and he starts not letting you get that wrist down, it's going to provide you with other opportunities. And this is something I would like to see him do more, but I do like that he does this, that he does control this wrist and puts his knee on it from in the closed guard so that he can throw a bounce. That makes a lot of sense to me. I don't want to go to a whole thing about things you can do from closed guard top. It just feels like he's just a lot, right? He's not really hurting him from here. And this is why I think that, like, if this is a position that I think that he started really laying into him, like coming in here and starting to throw bigger shots, like big elbows on top, whatever he's doing here, if he started really landing hard on these guys or was more aggressive in his passing, I think it'd be better for him. Now, once again, I'm criticizing from the standpoint of somebody that he would crush me if I rolled with him. But as a fan, this is what I would like to see. From top position, he's obviously very strong. He does get here a lot. One of the things he does, a lot of this very Dagestani style of getting to the back and getting that half control. One thing I want to point out that he does that I find really neat is when he's in side control, you know, one of the things that is great to do anyway is to start to bring these legs up. But what's cool is that he comes over to here almost like a reverse half guard. I'm not sure what you would call this, but he brings his leg over top. He doesn't just pin it here. He gets his leg all the way through and gets a hook in here. This is not a half guard. This is not a side control. This is now a back control. And what tends to happen is guys will roll away. And when they do, he's ready for it. So as they start to roll away this way, right, he comes in here, and as they start to come, he follows on top, gets his other hook in, and now he's here, and he gets his far side wrist control. Once again, like I said, very Dagestani in its approach, this style of wrestling with far side wrist control and kind of riding from on top. But a lot of times the way that he gets there, if he can get to a side control, which often happens as he starts to turn the corner on him from his takedowns, right? He gets in here, he turns the corner, and instead of getting stuck on the legs, he's in here now in a side control. And while he's working, they're thinking about up here, he's getting this position here, which is a nice segue to the back. Very, very nice attack from there. Now, from the back control, he spends a lot of time getting here. He's very good at getting here. A lot of times, obviously, he's trying to get to a body triangle whenever he can. A lot of little strikes, trying to get to the choke. He's good at getting here. But for all that, he doesn't have a lot of rear naked chokes, right? This should be, like, this is another position that he's not bad at. He's very dangerous, right? You know, being in this position itself is dangerous. But he's not like, this is not a position that, yes, he's threatening, but he should be finishing consistently. And I don't feel like he's doing that. And it's, once again, this is a criticism from somebody who's a sidelines fan. But I do feel like a lot of times he gets here and he's too busy tagging him to be focused on really completing this. And as they start ripping this away, right, starting to trap this arm or do stuff like this to really be more threatening in here. I would like to see more of that kind of stuff as he starts getting in here and starts to present more of a threat. This is fine to get to a choke, right? As they start defending in here. One of the things that is nice though, is that as he starts doing this, as he gets their arm up, he'll segue often into the head and arm choke. And that he has finished. The other thing that's neat is when he rides the back, I've seen him do this before too. He did this to Gordon, who's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, and he ripped his arm hard on this. Like, he got him solid on this. That as he came over the top, he brought his foot over, got a nice arm bar from right here, coming over the top in the back on turtle. Man, he had that in deep, and that was a very legitimately solid jiu-jitsu guy that he did that to. That was giving him a hard time in that fight. So, I mean, his attacks from top are fantastic. One thing I did want to segue back to, the problem with the closed guard thing, by the way, where he ran into trouble in the Manel Cop fight, you really see this showcased as you get somebody who is being active from bottom closed guard. And by the way, he does exactly one of the things I like to do a lot. Michael Bisping, we talked about it in his video, is the idea of coming in here, boom, 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 boom. And he lands a lot of like solid elbows on his head from that bottom closed guard because, in my opinion, he wasn't being active enough from there. And he didn't seem like he had good solutions for that. So that is the danger of if you're gonna be very wrestle heavy, or the flip side of that is if you end up in closed guard against a guy who's very wrestle heavy, boom, boom, is a really nice strategy. Let's come back. I'm gonna stop here and then we'll come back and talk about guillotine. The biggest lesson I want you to take away from this, more than anything else, is when you get a guy who shoots and shoots and shoots and shoots and shoots, your defense cannot be based on just getting a guillotine and hoping to finish him with that. Now, if you get to a guillotine, that's fine. Like, there are things you can do off of the guillotine, but if I'm here and I've got a guy in a guillotine, like, this should be me starting to think about getting up, using this, and sitting out, using this, stuff like that. But people get really excited about guillotines in the UFC, and I so rarely see them finish. And part of it is when you get a guy who wrestles as much as this guy, you're gonna have a horrible time trying to get that guillotine. First of all, we already know he's tough as nails. You can arm bar him, you can knee bar him, and the Punisher just keeps on coming, right? What I've seen happen a couple times, he comes in here, guy has the guillotine from butterfly position. This has happened before. All he does is he just, gets high here, keeps the pressure off his neck, keeps a little bit to the side so he doesn't get pulled over, and he just kind of takes his time, let them burn out, and then when he's ready to, he goes to his body lock pass, right? Like, he starts, like, he's just kind of ready to segue on. Like, this is not a concern for him. And actually, in that case, that was the first time I saw him do that. And this, I think, was Nemean, where he came in there, he had the guillotine. I think it was the first time I saw him do that back half guard or whatever it is, where he comes in here, he gets high, this comes off, he gets to the butterfly, he comes through, right? This kind of stuff. And as this comes across, he slides in here, and now he's got a back control. Somebody else, I can't feel maybe, went for a guillotine from a standing position, and he tried to jump into it, and all that happened was he was kind of ready for it. As soon as he felt it on his head, he blocked it so he couldn't get to a closed guard, and then he just kind of hung out in his bear crawl position and worked his way to the far side, got his head clear, and he was back in the fight winning again. So the big rule on this, that guy probably ends up with his head in a lot of guillotines, and your chance of finishing it is very low because he just gets it all the time. I'm not saying you can't guillotine him. I'm saying in the UFC, I don't see a lot of people finishing on the bottom with a guillotine anyway. And against a guy who wrestles as much as he does, I just don't know if you're going to get it. So the thing that's nice about it is because he does this so much, it's almost like a thing he doesn't have to worry about anymore because he's dealt with it so much that now it's just a thing he doesn't have to worry about. So really all he has to worry about now is being sprawled on or having somebody underhook him. And he clearly has solutions for that. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this coming back for system breakdowns. Thank you for watching. Make sure you share.